Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Mavit Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Who wants to start? Madhuri?
ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वाम् अनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारत तैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवैत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः।
वसुदेवसुदं देवं कंसचारूरमर्दनं देवही परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्।
सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज अहं त्वा सर्वपापेभ्यो मोक्षयिष्यामि मा शुचः। श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः।
So let me know if there is any problem with my Wi-Fi or anything. I can switch to hotspot. Okay, but for now it's working okay, right?
It's very good. Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have, of course, completed the 20 values. We've also discussed about what is moksha last time. Now we are entering, so basically from, shlokas number 8 through 12th, we were on the topic of jnanam. And we said that, the jnanam was all those values and everything, which is here, which we all went through. Now we are entering into this topic called as Niyam. Okay, so this is again in the phase one, we did all these values. And as just a little bit of recap before we come to this is because we have to know how Niyam fits, right? So we discussed about what is Kshetra, what is Kshetrajna, or the node of the field. And then we discussed about what upadhis are or conditionings. And here the upadhis included, apart from the 5 elements, the intellect, the buddhi, and the manas also. So, but then Lord Krishna asserts that there's only one knower of the field that is limited or conditioned by all of these upadhis. And therefore he says that knower has to understand how to get out of this limited conditionings and understand his true nature. So therefore, he gives this jnanam, which we say is the knowledge or the means of how to understand my true nature. So that's where we had the 20 values, which if we understand first what our issues are, which is how we discussed moksha last time, the reason we are unable to even understand that we are already that, there is nothing, we don't have to do anything in order to be that. There is really no effort that is required as such. We just have to know and be that. But we are unable to do it mainly because of the desires, the various conditionings of our mind, all the roles that we take up, and the areas that we which leads us to all this sorrow, and the ups and downs of our life, right? So we need to cultivate those 20 values and understand that we can slowly uncover mentally who we think we are and get to understand what the kshetrajna is. So, assuming that we have cultivated these values and we have also learned how to reduce importance of the external field of our operation in our own lives, okay, now we move on to understand further what is the knowledge to reach the supreme. Okay, this is really our ultimate goal, to understand who we are and which is moksha. And therefore this next six verses, shlokas 13 to 18, is basically about all that. Okay, so jnanam, which we did, was the 20 values, which is the knowledge of the means by which the goal is attained. Up till the last one, Tattva Jnana, Darshanam, and Atma Jnana, Nityatvam, they were all actually the means, even this ability to remain constant in the knowledge, which is, the Nityatvam, which we talked about, as well as Tattva Jnana Darshanam, which is understanding even that that is my final goal. Okay, so all these are nothing but means. But then what is Nayam? Okay, so Nayam, what is Nayam here? And therefore I've said here the Nayam is the knowledge which tells us about the goal. Okay, our goal, of course, we understand is, understanding that I'm not this body, mind, intellect, I'm not all the roles that I'm playing, but I'm something else. That is the knowledge. And that knowledge, today, actually, it's a very deep topic we're entering into. And so that knowledge is needed in order for us to clearly understand about our goals. So Lord Krishna really gets into this topic here. And he says that he will reveal what is that knowledge, what all of us should know in this world. And for example, I mean, the way our education is structured today, we learn about so many things, right? We send our kids to our schools, and then, of course, from schools to a plus two. I mean, here it is plus two. There it's, of course, still part of high school, right? High school is ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th. Whereas here it's up to 10th and then plus two. So we learn all these things in our schools, our colleges, and then after that we go through, maybe an MBA or something, professional training, and then we work, we gain a lot of experience. But really, none of that knowledge, okay, none of those things which we spent so many years of our human life, this human life itself is such a rare phenomena which is being given to us. But we spend all our time only on acquiring that knowledge which we think is going to make us successful in the world. And this success, which is so much of ups and downs, so much of sorrows we go through, so much of, this kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, all those things that we go through, the sukha, dukkha, the likes and dislikes, all these things that we go through, there is really no solution that that education offers us. So none of them really gives us a kind of an aha, finally I have understood how to deal with these issues. We deal with these issues in a very, very short way. Maybe, if I go through some anxiety or depression, I go to a psychotherapist or psychologist or whatever. And any other kind of thing, we have, of course, our medical doctors and everything. But nothing really gives a permanent solution to the sorrow. So each time, we leave ourselves, we go through all these same old things. We go through this in the world with our senses to fulfill a desire, we generate the sorrow, then we create, what should I say, a kind of a closure for each and every incident. But then we come back. And and we go through it again and again. Have you ever thought about how can I really get to that permanent solution? So, this permanent solution is basically that our scriptures are saying that you are only going through it mentally. You're only going through it because you have so much of desires, so much of thoughts, all this. But in reality, you are not that which is going through all that issues. It's like I take my sari, I wear a sari and the sari has a lot of stains and everything. And what do I do? I start to, it's dirty, it's cleaned up, and then I put it back. But I'm not that sari. So, to all these problems that I go through in this world, I have to recognize that Sunitha as Brahman is not going through it. But the minute she identifies herself with that role, then she's going through all this. Now, of course, that kind of a knowledge is very tough to recognize when I'm going through an issue, right? It's very tough. So, which is why, as part of our sadhana, we should have that reflection, that meditation, during which time I'm constantly telling myself, I am not that Sunitha who's going through all this. As soon as I sit for meditation, what happens is all those thoughts of Sunitha going through it will first go through my mind. But in and through that, I have to tell myself, I'm not that. I'm actually not that mortal self. I'm not that limited being. I'm actually unlimited. I'm not that finite person, finite in the sense I'm limited by this, you know, by this height and the weight and whatever, which is conditioning me to think that I'm this person with the rules. I'm actually this immortal self. Okay, I'm totally immortal. I'm actually not this limited, space in a bottle or something. I'm this unlimited space. I'm this unlimited space, not the space of this room, which is conditioned by the walls. So, Krishna is now starting to talk about this immortal self of ours. Okay? I am that immortal self. And he says that immortal self is that Brahman. And it is the same essence in all of us. And it is the same essence which is there pervading everywhere. It is actually that Param or Supreme, which beyond which nothing else needs to be known. You know, so for all of us who have been to colleges with many degrees or all of things, and now we have come to a stage where I have to gain that knowledge, gain that understanding that I am this immortal self. And does that require more PhDs? No, it doesn't require any more PhDs. All it needs is for me to sit down, reflect, and understand. And if there's any doubts, I need to see how those doubts can be taken. So I need to understand that this Brahman, which we are talking about, is not only is it immortal, but it is eternal. And he will use this word anadimat, and it is without any beginning. Is it something that will end as soon as I go to sleep or when I die? No. That will continue to be there. What will die is only my physical self. What is carried on through is this notion that I think I'm not Brahman and I have to fulfill the wishes of that not self more and more and more. And that part of it is the one which gets carried through when I die. And what still remains, which is independent of all this, is that eternal self or Brahman. Okay? And it is not we will see all this. I'm just giving a short background to, this, because from now on, this topic will be only about that immortal self, because we need to talk about that more and more and more and more to keep on reminding ourselves. And we will learn about how this Brahman, okay, it is not something which I can understand, of course, like I said, with the PhD or with many books, through all the equipments that I normally use to understand knowledge, which is with my mind, with my intellect, or by touching, feeling, seeing, hearing, all that. Will I be able to understand the Brahman? No. When I go to the university for the education and everything, I have to employ all those senses. But for this one, I don't need to, because it is not something which is manifested, which has come into any shape, which has come into any form. It is not that. Okay? It is not an object of the perception of the mind. It is not something that when I think, finally that will get in front of me, and because of my power of thinking, it will get manifested. No. So, all these things we will now see that how we are that thing. But then, we also question ourselves, why is it so difficult for us? Why is it so difficult for us to understand as simple as this, as simple as the fact that I am that unconditioned being? It's mainly because we have been habituated. We have always been habituated to think only with that anything which has an object, or anything which I can smell, anything which I can hear, that is the only way we have trained ourselves. Now we have to train ourselves to, or untrain ourselves, because what we are trying to understand is an abstract concept. Any amount, I mean, we can think, we can try to use all, like I said, the equipments which we have talked before, through our eyes and everything, even instruments like microscope and all these things we can try to understand, but it is something which is not accessible in any of this. So we've also talked about earlier, how this we can do it by coming to neti neti principle, right? Which is keep on saying, okay, is this Brahman? Is this paper Brahman? No, because it's limited. It can be accessed by my hand and everything. So that is not Brahman. Then is this cup Brahman? Is my mind Brahman? No, because all of them are finite. They are limited. They cannot be understood by that. So this is, it can only be attained first, like I said, by negating everything that is not this, by first slowly and slowly, not only the objects, but also the means by which we try to access these objects. All that also needs to be negated. So that is what we are coming to here, because the question number 6, yet prabhavacha, so what is the ways in which we can understand this knowledge? So this nyayam, it is presented in such a way as how um, only through the how we understand a great Mahatma who has understood that knowledge. Okay, how would that jnani, what are the qualities of that jnani? Um, so, through the understanding of the qualities of the jnani, we can actually try to understand this knowledge. So, for all of us too, when we are young, what do? We look for role models, right? Because if somebody were to say, oh, you have to be honest, okay, how do I understand honesty? You know, um, by itself as a concept, I may not necessarily understand that. But if I know that somebody is practicing honesty, then I'll say, aha, okay, so that is what honesty is. And look how, because he's honest, he's loved by so many people. I also want to be like that person because I also want to be loved by everyone. This is just a simple example I'm just giving. So that is how we train ourselves as the next step. So far, we learned about all the 20 values and everything. But now we're trying to understand how does a jnani, what are the qualities of a jnani? So, that jnani has already lived that life that way. And this jnani is the closest we can understand to that absolute Brahman. So that is what the next six things are going to be talked about. So this Nyayam is presented in the form of this six qualities which are representative of this knowledge. So that is uh, omnipotence. And each one, when we come to it, we'll go more into the depth of what it means. Omniscience, omnipresence. Then there are no parts to it. Okay. Each, like for example, now that we are doing a lot of this Indian knowledge systems in India, we are trying to revive that. One of the big things about understanding what Indian knowledge system is, when compared to the current way of knowledge is, as a simple example, I want to say is like, say, if you take chemistry, uh, today, I can get a PhD in bioengineering of a material, of a particular material, bioengineered materials, but even bioengineered materials of a complex of sodium and something, something, that. So we are fragmenting it, or we are creating more and more parts of the knowledge, right? Now, Indian knowledge system, for example, is something where you bring in many parts to understand a concept, So that partlessness was there in our Indian knowledge, is there in our Indian knowledge system. That's just an example I want to give. Then timelessness. Again, it's beyond time. So this is what we are trying. And of course, finally is effulgence, or is completely bright. That jnani is so bright. So, so that is just to give you an idea. So let's enter into shloka number 13. Jneyam yattat pravakshyami. Jneyam yattat pravakshyami. Yajñātvāmritam ashnute. Yajñātvāmritamashnuते anadimat param brahma nasat nasattat nasattat nasat na asat uchyate nasattat na asat uchyate. So Jneyam, that which is to be known, which out to be known, yat tat, that which, pravakshyami, I will now describe it. So Krishna is now telling Arjuna that I will now describe that which, after having realized Jnatva, okay, one attains to immortality. One truly, truly understands that immortality, how we can attain that. And what is the aspect of immortality? He says it is anadimat, it's without any beginning, it is param, it is supreme, and it is not manifest. By that, it is not something which I can, like a magician. Sometimes, magician will, out of nothing, he will produce something, right? So this Brahman cannot be produced just like that. It cannot be manifested in the form of any object. Okay. But at the same time, I will not say that Lord Krishna is saying, I will not say that it is not unmanifest either. So it is neither manifested nor unmanifest. So you can see how much of, one may say, is he trying to confuse us, or is he trying to say something which is going beyond above my head? You know, so we will try to understand each one of them, So this, basically, this amount of understanding, if I can get to, that can really remove any kind of ignorance that I might have. So Anadimat Param Brahma, meaning this beginningless Brahman, which we are trying to understand. And so we'll go through this actually term by term, So Yattat Pravakshyami. So from the previous verse, the topic of Jnanam, of course, was over. And we are only trying to understand now, out of the six that Arjuna wanted to know, right now there's only three, which is Niyam, Prakriti, and Purushaha. And so this topic of Jnanam is what? So it is, so he's telling, hey Arjuna, Yattat Pravakshyami. I shall now tell you what this, about this, which really has to be known by everyone, Madhuri must be thinking right now, so why can't I teach this to my grandchild right now? If it has to be known to everyone, why don't I start right now? So, everyone has to study this and at one time or the other. So, uh, the key thing, what Lord Krishna is saying is this is something that everyone has to know. Everything else is optional. Whereas we take all those optional things and we are trying to learn now. And then as we grow older, we are recognizing that all those things that I learned, okay, nothing is, of course, giving me that permanent happiness. Or, of course, I don't know if people really look for permanent happiness. People are quite happy with this temporary happiness because it gives me variety of I look at that happiness is, in a variety. Sometimes clothes give me happiness, sometimes food gives me happiness, sometimes a painting gives me happiness. So I kind of quantify right now as a different object's happiness. That's how I don't recognize it. Happiness is something which is beyond that object, right? So too, I'm going to the school and everything, all that, to study all these things because I think it will give me happiness in different ways. I think if I study chemistry, it'll give me happiness. I think if I study music, it'll give me happiness. All that is different. So I'm studying more and more and more of all that. Finally, I come to realize what Krishna is saying. I'm going to tell you something. Yatat Pravakshyami. I'm going to tell you about that which everybody has to know. There is just no question about it. That absolute thing has to be known. So, Yajñatva Amritam Ashnuti. Now, this is a loaded sentence, loaded phrase, because, you know, somebody may say, and especially, our very, very young kids, suppose you tell them you have to eat your cereal or you have to drink your milk. Why? Why? Why should I do it? What will happen? You know, what will happen if I don't drink milk? So Krishna is saying that answer. He's saying, if you know this, because if you know this, this will solve all your problems. Okay? The fundamental problem of for all of us is that, we are looking for something in places where it is not there. Like say, like for example, this, I mean, happiness, we said, we're looking for happiness in all these objects and things. It goes back to almost the second chapter of self-unfoldment, and where we are talking about happiness, and then we talked about how if I have happiness, if I have one gulab jamun, I feel I'm happy. So I think that happiness is in that gulab jamun. So let me have more and more of that. So I'll get more and more happiness. But then I realized that that is only making me sick. It didn't make me permanently happy. So that is one thing. The second thing, of course, we're looking for wealth and fame and name, all this, mainly because it gives me some sense of security, right? Because we have that innate sense of insecurity, that fear of I mean, let's say for us at this point, is this mortality. Will I be there for everything? Will I be there for all the events that is happening in my house? You know, so that insecurity or that mortality is a universal problem. Okay. And so Krishna is saying, no, I will tell you by, I'll tell you, if you know this, you will understand that you don't have to feel insecure. You don't have to feel, all the time looking for something else because you are that. You are that immortal self. And that is one thing that we need to understand, that immortal, Amritam, Ashnute, So if I don't know this, I will constantly be looking at it in other places. So let me tell you that you are that Amritam. And Krishna is saying that that alone will give you that immortality and the freedom from everything else. Today, we are living in bondage because we're looking for happiness in other places. So we are bound by that notion that if somebody says, I love you, only then I feel loved. If somebody gives me a gift, if somebody gives me a flower. So I'm really kind of bound to those feelings. And that is why I'm unable to recognize that I actually am totally free of all this. I have that freedom. And I need to focus upon that one. And therefore, therefore he's saying, Arjuna, listen, I'm telling you this knowledge, which is Nyayam, which is nothing but that Parabrahma, Supreme, as I said. And what does Brahman mean? The word Brahman, it is, it is the truth, Satyam. It is Jnanam. It is that absolute knowledge. Once I go for this knowledge, then I don't have to worry about any other knowledge. I do have to worry about all that other knowledge as long as I'm living in this world and I need to do something in order to feed myself. So I acquire some skills only for that purpose, only to keep this body running. It's like, I buy this expensive grinder or whatever, and it comes with the manual, which I know I have to operate it in order to use that grinder. So too for us, in order to keep this physical body running and also the mind and intellect to make it keep on sharp, to keep it sharp, I need to learn some skill. But that knowledge is only for that purpose. But I need to know what my absolute knowledge is, which is the jnanam. Then it is anantam, infinite. Okay, which is, what do we mean by infinite? Uh, Infinite from basically we call this as it is not limited. You know, it is space wise. It is not limited. It is beyond space. And another thing is time wise. Time wise also it is it's limit. It's not limited. It was there before. It is there today. It will be there tomorrow. So time wise also it is unlimited. Okay. And then it is also Desha Paricheda. So Desha Paricheda, Kala Paricheda. So not limited by time, not limited by space. So all these attributes, so all this is what that knowledge is all about. And this is what we call as that Brahman, which is Anantam, which is free from Desha, Kala and Vastu. Vastu, which is, it is not limited by any form or limited by any shape. Okay. None of those things. So it is Desha Kala Vastu Paricheda Shunyam, we say, which is that absolute Brahman. And who is that Brahman? I. I am the Brahman. You are the Brahman. Everybody is Brahman. So it is, we are not limited by any of this one. So this, if we have that understanding that I am that absolute self, I will never feel, for example, just as an example, if I'm envious of my neighbor who has bought a big jaguar or something like that, I will say, oh, I in that physical body has bought the jaguar. So I'm very happy. I will not feel jealous. Somebody gets a promotion, I'm not jealous because I feel, I am in that person have won this promotion, right? So that's the aspect of Brahman which we are trying to get to, is really understand that Parabrahma, state, to understand that I am that Parabrahma, and that part of it, I need to understand very well. And then it is Anadimat Param. You know, that is, it is beginningless, timeless, and it is not conditioned. All this is, it is absolutely, and it is beyond any cause, it is beyond any effect, it's beyond time itself. So that is that absolute self which I am. Like in one of the Upanishad, it talks about, Ashabdam, Asparsham, Arupam, Avyayam, Tatha Rasam, Nityam, Agandhavachayat. So it is all these things, it is asparsham, it is arupam, it doesn't have a form, it is not something which can be spoken about, it doesn't have a, like arupam, you said, an avyayam, it is, and it's tatharasam nityam, it is always eternal. So Brahman doesn't have any of this, no form, no color, taste, touch, and so you cannot really feel any of that thing. So it is anadi, but there's no cause, there's no thing, and that is what ultimately is this. So, so we covered, so that is what shloka number 13 is trying to say, that this is the state of the knowledge which we are trying to get to. So, yeah. So in the 13th verse, basically he's trying to get to that. Now let's move on to the 14th verse. Okay. So 14th verse is again continuing on the same theme here. Sarvatah panipadam tat. Sarvatah panipadam tat. Sarvatah सर्वतोक्षिशिरोमुखं सर्वतोक्षिशिरोमुखं सर्वतः पाणिपादं तत् सर्वतोक्षिशिरोमुखं सर्वतः श्रुतिमल्लोके सर्वतः श्रुतिमल्लोके सर्वमावृत्य तिष्ठति सर्वमावृत्य तिष्ठति. So now, so far, we've learned about the quality of Brahman, which is anadi, and which cannot be experienced by our regular ways. Now we are coming to understand what is omnipotence. Okay, omnipotence. So this is, we are trying to understand that part of the jnani to act through beings, through their organs of action. Okay, so Brahman is omnipotent. Brahman is everywhere. Now we may say Brahman is everywhere, and you're saying that I cannot see, touch, feel, etc. Now, how do I experience Brahman? Okay, which which is an interesting thing, because we are saying experience can happen only through the mind and intellect and everything, right? And here you're asking me to experience a Brahman. So he's saying you can experience a Brahman by recognizing that in and through everything in this world, okay, in and through everything in this world, I can experience that Brahman. So that Brahman has hands and feet everywhere. Sarvatah pani padam tat. And not only that, that Brahman also has akshi shiro mukham. Okay, has eyes, akshi, shiro, the heads, and mukham, mouths everywhere. Then Sarvata Shrutimat Loke has ears everywhere. And Sarvam Avritya Tishtati. So this is how that Brahman exists everywhere. So he is the hands and feet, he is the eyes, heads and mouths. So omnipotence basically relates to all this. And this, that by by way, he's trying to like some people, when we hear different philosophies, we hear about this word energy. Oh, that Brahman is that. Well, actually, we should not say it that way. Um, we say that energy flows everywhere. But here, it is that sentiency, we say, that ability because of which something is functioning that way. For example, what is it that makes my ears listen to something? What is it that makes my eyes see something? What is it that makes my legs and fans move? Okay, it is that sentiency, and that sentiency is that Brahman. So this is how, so in the first one, he just gives all these adjectives like Anadi and everything. In this shloka, he's now trying to show, see, because again, the child in us will say, okay, you're telling me about this, but how can I really understand this concept? I have to understand that it is because of that Brahman acts in and through all of us, in and through these things by giving it the power of sentiency. So, in a sense, this shloka by itself covers this whole aspect. So, just as an example, let's take, how do we, to understand this concept, let's take this electricity. So the teacher will not, go to the child and say that electricity is, I mean, a young child, who's just starting off in the first grade or something. Suppose he goes and says, okay, electricity is nothing but the flow of electrons. And, he will not go directly to electrons because first the child has to know what is science. How is science different from humanities, arts, and everything? Then he has to teach him what is chemistry. Then he has to tell him about the atom. And then he has to talk about electron, proton. So much goes on, right? So he won't really go there already. So he takes him first, step by step. And once the child has grasped the concept, then he will say, okay, do you see the light in the bulb? Do you see the electricity in the fridge? Do you see the electricity which is powering the microwave, the computer, all this? So once he has this one, he then tells him that wherever you see wires, there is electricity. Slowly, the child understands this, right? So the Krishna is also using a similar kind of a concept for us to understand that aspect of Brahman, you know. So if we do this, for example, with this electricity example, the teacher might tell the child, see, do you see that light burning? That bulb is burning. Or you see that the computer is powering. He will just show by the final effect of it, right? So too, Krishna is actually doing the same thing by saying that, okay, you know, that there is an action which happens because of the mouth moving or by the eyes seeing. So that's why he's using this word, these things of the hands and legs and, all this. So again, going back to this example of electricity, the child may sometimes think that the electricity in the bulb is different than the electricity of a fan or in the computer, right? So Krishna is trying to tell him that electricity, which is flowing through all this, is nothing but the same thing. There's no difference at all. So, this is again such an important aspect from all of us when once we know that Brahman, that Atman which is in me, which is me, is the same in you, then automatically all likes, dislikes, anything that I may have thought about somebody else drops away right away, right? And then The same thing is about the space or this room space, which I'm looking at here, right? The minute I know that the space is not limited only to this, but the minute I break the walls, it becomes something else. So too, this Brahman is nothing but it is not limited by anything. It is eternal. And that is how I can actually understand this. So, Brahman is then, like for example, in the Upanishads, it is revealed as that this entire, whatever is there, is nothing but Brahman. The entire, whatever has been, it's like, for example, the pot itself, okay? When I make the pots into different shapes, I immediately say, oh, this is a small pot, this is a big pot, this is a brown pot, this is an orange pot, all this, right? But ultimately, where did it come from? It actually came from that mud, right? So too, again, to simplify the concept in our own mind, this Brahman is nothing but is the cause for this entire world. Okay, so Brahman is the basic stuff of this entire universe. It is the one which gives that ultimate content. How it happens and all that, we'll come to it later. But if I can understand even that aspect of it, it's really a great learning. So even though there are so many, like, again, being a chemist, I can only talk about molecules and atoms and everything. We know that in the periodic table, there is so many elements and atoms, but we also know that all these things through this concepts of fusion and fission and everything can be converted from one thing to another, right? So if I keep on going back and back as to what is all this stuff, it is nothing, it goes back to this one concept of what is this Brahman. So understanding Brahman is a very important aspect for all of us. And to understand that Brahman is that ultimate basic substance of our creation. Okay. And it is there behind everything. When I say behind, doesn't mean that there's a veil which is hiding everything. That veil is nothing but actually it is our own ignorance. We are so ignorant of the fact that I am that absolute Brahman, but I'm functioning as Sunitha all the time, and I'm attaching so much of importance to the Sunitha. This mindset of it needs to change, right? So this, it is actually not in, it is not actually, as if it is completely hidden or anything. It is just that we will never be able to understand this concept if I were to use the normal means of knowledge. So that is why we are trying to understand this concept, and we will see as we go more and more into this thing, we will try to understand this much more deeper things that I wanted to get into. But I think we will stop here because just wanted to introduce that concept of what is this knowledge that we are trying to get to. Okay. So we'll stop here and we'll meet again next week because this can be quite deep. But maybe I'll just stop here and ask you so far any thoughts, any questions?
Hari Om.
Yes, Anand?
Yeah, when we say, the concept Amrutatvam,
Mm-hmm.
so that's the permanent state, right? So, like
Mm-hmm.
one way of remembering, on maybe on the lighter side is, if a dish or something is, exceptionally very good,
Uh-huh.
people say that, okay, it's like Amrutam, it's like nectar.
Uh-huh.
So,
Right.
like, just on the lighter side, but start understanding, what it looks like or how to experience and to think in those lines.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is it's the best of best knowledge. It is something
Yes.
we have to know about it. It is the sweetest of sweet. It is in every possible way, it is the ultimate in its way. So
The
for that,
yes, the highest of the highest. Yes.
the highest of the highest, yes. That's how, see, Upanishads will focus only on this aspect of Brahm, this aspect. And we, on the other hand, we are spending a lot of time on on understanding everything that is limited. So, for example, if we are studying a certain knowledge, we want to improve and improve and improve and learn about this one, which still is very limited. By learning more and more limited things, we'll never get to the unlimited. So I have to change my mindset completely. I have to unlearn a lot of things. I have to get away from the way that has made many things as a habit. Only then I can get to that absolute self of Brahman. So, in the next week's talk, we will discuss more about how today we have conditioned ourselves through a variety of ways. Like, for example, anything for us which doesn't have a shape or a form or a color or anything, we reject it. And in simple form, even let's take, since you brought up this topic of food, Anant, I'm just thinking, you know, even in food, for example, if a sambar or what, I'm just taking the basic dish here, if a sambar is not made exactly like the way I have it, I feel it's not good, right? So we are limiting ourselves by our previous memories of
Mm.
something, we're limiting ourselves by our own likes. And the more and more we limit ourselves with these basic things, the farther and farther we are away from really solving the problem that we are facing today, which is this problem of this temporariness. We think this happiness is in these objects. So we're living in a kind of a world of temporary happiness. That temporary happiness is always has its own ups and downs. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not that great. But if I am that unlimited self, I will I need to start working on some of these things which I've created as a habit and break those habits to get to that ultimate state. So
Yeah,
that part of it is where we are trying to get to.
yeah. Sunita, so I have a like Nayam is the sadhana stage.
No, name is also all of them at the end of the day are nothing but sadhanas.
Sadhana
So
only. Like
name is
Neti
also a
Neti.
sadhana.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
name is also a sadhana stage compared to the jnanam, nyayam is how the words are described
Okay.
here, right? In the 13th chapter, jnanam referred to the means, the
Okay. Yeah,
values
yeah.
which were like the sopanam or the
Uh-huh.
steps by which we were trying to do it,
Like
whereas
20 values kind
nyayam,
of a thing. Okay.
right. So this isn't, I'm glad you brought up this question, Madhuriji. So nyayam is the knowledge of Brahman, what we are trying to
Yeah,
learn
so
now.
Neti stage kind of a thing. So we are
Neti
trying to
Neti
understand
is one,
ourselves.
correct,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. We will, Neti Neti is one way, that is by saying this is not that, this is not that way, that is one, correct. But the other thing also is trying to understand today, how do I gather knowledge? We try to gather knowledge through all these sense organs, through the mind, through the intellect. But this knowledge cannot be gained that way.
Mm.
To some extent, our intellect, to some extent, our intellect is using that Neti Neti principle to get to where it is. But this is even beyond the intellect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
like I said, just even listening to this will and reflecting upon it will take us closer to the goal. So that is what Nyayam is. Nyayam
Oh.
is really understanding that knowledge of Brahman. If I
Oh.
don't know what I'm looking for,
Mhm.
what, like there is this quote in Alice in Wonderland, that old Alice in Wonderland had
Yes,
been,
yes,
I
that
think
that one.
youngsters may not really, but there's a beautiful thing about this Alice as she is going, she asks this cat, so am I going in the right path? He says, first, if you don't know where actually the cat says, if you don't know where you're going, any path will take you there.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So we need to know where I'm going. And that is what Nyayam is all about. Nyayam is understanding that knowledge of what Brahman is. And that is why in shlokas from 13 onwards, it starts to say that, it is anadi, it is not a manifested one, neither it is an unmanifest.
Mhm.
Because if we say it is unmanifest, we may end up like the Shunyavadis, one aspect of Buddhism, which says that if we all come from nothing.
Mm.
So it is not that we don't come from nothing. Unmanifest would mean that as if we have come out of nothing. No, we have not come out of nothing. We have come out of something. What is that something is what we are trying to understand.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Sunitha.
Yeah. Okay. So we will talk about a lot of these next week, which is again pretty deep. Yeah. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shanti. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sunitha.
And so
Thank you.
now we're kind of getting back to the guru after spending a lot of time on those values, but those values were
Yeah.
needed because that's a major sadhana we have to do in everyday life, in being aware of it. That's the awareness. And now we are trying to understand what the knowledge of our goal, what is our goal? How does that goal look like?
Mm.
So without that, it'll be hard what shlokas 13 and 14 we did. Okay, thank you.
Haru, is the recording to be stopped?
I will stop it. Sorry, one second.